Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Um, so want to welcome everybody to our class today with Derek Nicholas. So excited to have you here, Derek. Before we get started with Derek, my name is Michelle Shaw. I have an initiative called Minneapolis Edible Boulevards. What we do with Minneapolis Edible Boulevards is we partner with our North Side and South Side Green Zone neighborhoods to work on food injustice issues. For some of us grew up with white privilege, having access to fresh produce, not realizing that not everyone had that same access. And I really did not realize that until just a few years ago. And that was when I started this initiative and have been really passionate about making sure that everybody has that same access. And so what we do is offer resources to people that need it, whether that be education for how to transform your lawn into a garden, the soil, the compost, volunteers if you need it to help, trowels, you name it, we're trying to be there to support people and work with nonprofits and like Dream of Wild Health, which is how we met Derek, and partner with cooks and instructors and nutrition program coordinators so that we can learn more about other cultures and provide our communities, like people who live in Little Earth. We also have Kelly Shea and Natalia Mendez who have been doing classes, so that representation is just so important that we offer that for our communities that we're working with. So just wanted to share a little bit about what we do. And before I hand it over to Derek, one thing that's really important is that not only do we acknowledge that we're on Dakota land, some of us are on Ojibwe land, you may be on other native land, but also it isn't enough to just acknowledge, but to demand that our native people get land back. That really is the most important thing. And so wherever you are, please make sure that you're carrying that message, to companies, to City Hall, to our park boards, wherever you are, because really acknowledgement is such a tiny piece, and the most important thing is giving land back. So just wanted to share that with you all today, and I'm so glad that you're here. So I'm going to pass it over to Derek, and we're going to get started.
Thank you, Michelle. I think it's also very important to note that not only with the land acknowledgement, it's also very important to do your part into protecting our environment. I think we're all live together and we all share the same world, the same resources, and it's just super vital to make sure that we're treating our land with the most respect, because right now a lot of our plant and animal relatives are beginning to suffer with air quality, water quality, soil quality, and the list goes on and on. I think about this story that I've been told that our we have like our wild plants, wild animals, and our domesticated ones. And we have this old legend that says that before we had any domesticated plants and animals, we made a deal with those specific animals and plants that they'd come with us to our villages, to be domesticated, to live with us. And in return would offer them clean air, clean water, and clean soil. And it's up to us to hold up our end of the bargain so they can continue to hold up their end of the bargain to provide their life, give us nutrition and sustenance for us to thrive in our communities. So being a good ally, being a good relative is all about looking 7 generations to the past and think about how they would do things, which were always done in a very sustainable way. We always made an offering before we would take anything. And then look to 7 generations in the future. Like, what do you want your great grandkids to have? You want them to have what you have and even have more than what you have. So instead of just taking things from the earth, it's good to put things into the earth and provide life instead of take so much life. So I just wanted to make that little point before I begin on my introduction. But bonjour, Derek Indigena Cause, Minneapolis, Ojibwe, Kakabakan and Swabakan, Jikarish Kanigan, Wajibayan, Bakwan and Dudam, Adana Key Division Indian Work, Minneapolis, Wisaneg LLC. So that was a kind of a traditional Ojibwe protocol introduction. I was just introducing myself, saying hello, my name is Derek, and I'm from the Milwaukee area. I currently live in Minneapolis, Twin City area, and I'm Red Cliff Band Ojibwe. The actual translation I said is I come from the leftover piece of land called Red Cliff, because we don't really have the word for reservation, but we look at it as like a leftover piece of land, you know, kind of like the scraps, because that's what we did receive. It was just fortunately my reservation was in a pretty good spot. We're up in Red Cliff, which is right on Lake Superior on the way tip of Wisconsin. So we do have a lot of good resources. We have Kichigami, our Lake Superior. We have Frog Bay, which is a national forest. So we do have good resources, but many other reservations got put into areas where there wasn't much there. It's kind of desolate land. So it was kind of a struggle area for them to be in. So I'm also Bear Clan, and I work at the Division of Indian Work as a nutrition program coordinator. And I also have a personal business called Wisaneg LLC. So at Division of Indian Work as a nutrition program coordinator, my main responsibility is to cook for our programs. So we're a nonprofit based in Minneapolis, and we cater to the urban Native community. So some of the programs we have are like a youth leadership development program, which are young Native kids that are in school, and we'll pick them up from school, take them over to DIW, and we'll help them with their homework, their schoolwork, anything else that they could use support with. And then I cook them a dinner. And we have other groups like Women Traditional Birthing and Doula Group, which are young women that are pregnant and wanting to give like a traditional birthing. So we have like birthing doulas for them, and our good support systems, like we'll make cradle boards for them and star quilts, baby moccasins, offer like breast milk for them, and other stuff that helps with the pregnancy process. We have a youth leadership council group, which are young adults that are in and out of the foster care system, and we'll support them in any way possible, whether it's helping find housing or getting a driver's license or whatever the case may be. So we have all those different programs and even more. And I try my best to cook a healthy, culturally appropriate meal for each program and try to tailor those meals to each group. You know, if when I'm cooking for the kids, if it was up to them, they would just have pizza and hot Takis every day. So I have to kind of figure out fun ways to cook our traditional foods with a contemporary twist to make them more modern, more kid-friendly. And with other groups, I try to cook for what their needs are. So maybe for the pregnant women group, I try to throw in a food that helps with postpartum or something like that. Just try to be creative in those terms and try to think of the audience I'm cooking for. Our food is very sacred, and we look at it as medicine. So whenever we're cooking, we think that whatever the energy we have, we can put that into our food. So it's very important to have good thoughts when you're working in the kitchen, if you're working with others, not to be gossiping or speaking down to others. So you just want to be, you want to have all love and positivity when you're working with our foods. And I mean, it's kind of a real thing. Like studies show that cows, when they're under a lot of stress and then they're killed, that stress will actually stay in their meat, and you can consume that, and then that'll actually affect your body. So it's kind of, I can't speak too much about that. I should probably learn the science behind that a little bit more, but it's a kind of cool study that you can find on Google if you're interested. And learn more about. So then also at Division of Indian Work, I work with a lot of elders and try to revitalize our knowledge. Due to colonialism, a lot of our wisdom, our teachings were lost. We weren't able to speak our language, weren't able to practice our culture, go to ceremony, go out and forage or hunt. So right now there's been a big surge to revitalize our systems, our food systems. So going out and foraging with elders, learning how to identify our plants, the medicine behind the plants, our stories, our songs behind the plants, and be able to bring them back to our community. So one thing at DIW I've been doing is developing an indigenous food pantry. So I have a pretty big pantry, and then on one side I have our westernized ingredients, and then on the other side I have just native ingredients, which can look like, oh man, what do I got? I got like hackberry patties, choke cherry patties, maple syrup, walnut oil, cranberries, walnuts, a whole bunch of different corns and beans and dehydrated squash, and some wild plants like sumac and wild ramps. And then in my freezers, I got like a whole bunch of walleye and bison and elk, muskrats, bear, rough grouse. So trying to bring in all those ingredients so that we have access to them year round, and we can do stuff like this, like doing meetings or calls and sharing about our food systems, our old time knowledge around that, and be able to bring that back to our communities. So that's what I mostly do at Division of Indian Work, and I wear a lot of many different hats there. So any kind of like food initiatives I'll be a part of. That includes like the Indigenous Food Network. It's kind of like a collaborative, a group of people and organizations here in the Minneapolis area, and we do food sovereignty events. So this is like Division of Indian Work's part of the Indigenous Food Network, Dream Wild Health, Gatherings Cafe, Forces Just Farmers Market, and we'll maybe like host community events like cooking demos, cooking classes, and it's good engagement for the community. And then with my personal business, Seasonings LLC, that's just a platform to showcase my food sovereignty work. So we try our best to create educational resources for free. While we do that, that's what we do, because we want it to be accessible to everybody. So we have I have a cookbook that's out called Eating with the Seasons, Anishinaabe, Great Lakes region, which is a seasonal cookbook that incorporates Anishinaabe language, cultural lessons. And I wanted that to be free because it should be accessible to everybody. Everyone should have access to our language and our culture and some good recipes. And also I have like Indigenous food pantry on there, so you can print off this little PDF and take it to your local co-op or grocery store and see what substitutes you can make in your household to decolonize your diet. So maybe instead of going with a beef option, you might go with a bison option, or instead of chicken, you might go duck, or maybe instead of having kiwis, you get strawberries, or whatever the case may be. And then we also do education through cooking classes, cooking demos, food pop-ups, catered events, facilitating cultural exchange classrooms, and trips as well, internationally and domestically. So one thing I've been kind of doing is traveling and visiting Indigenous cultures around the world and learning about how colonialism's affected their food system, learning about their culture and spirituality, and tying it to our First Nations cultures and livelihood, and trying to find the internet there. So this past year I was in Panama working with the Embria tribe, taking these like dugout canoes deep into the rainforest and staying with them for a few days, learning about their food systems and hearing their stories about spirits and all that, and then making those connections to facilitate cultural exchange classrooms. So that may look like having their kids on their reservation in their village be like on a Zoom call with some of our youth up at Red Cliff, and that they might be all playing the drum together or dancing together. And it's kind of very empowering for the youth because they see that they're not alone, that there's more people that practice similar indigenous cultures and still keep those original creation instructions, those original instructions with them. So it's very empowering for them to do that. And I like to start facilitating trips. When I was down in Panama, the Embryo tribe was telling me that they want to bring their kids up to the United States and that they're really happy to host me again and have some of our youth come down. And then, sorry,
So
what?
Derek, sorry to interrupt, but is your cookbook something I could find while we get started cooking and I can put it in the chat box?
Yeah, it's on blurb.com.
Blurb?
Yeah, BLURB. And it's
Okay.
called Eating with the Seasons.
Okay, I will find that and put it in the chat.
Sounds good. And then I also do like sustainability work with food and water. So I was just out in East Africa, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Uganda. And I've been doing volunteer work for Feeding Mouths, Filling Minds for the past 2.5 years, I'd say, and building sustainable food and water projects out there. So a couple of the projects that I've been a part of was one in Rwanda at Bungo Secondary School. And it's a boarding school that hosts 300 to 500 kids at a time. And I was building a sustainable food system for them. So we started off with a seed project. And with that seed project, we were able to take, that's kind of like one of our traditional teachings in the Anishinaabe culture. We take a third of the seed, goes towards us, third of the seed goes towards the animals, and third of the seed goes towards the next crop for next year. So we were able to implement that practice, and with that being sustainable, we were able to start a poultry project there as well. So be able to get them chickens. We also were able to get them rabbits. So the school now has access to all this food. And then a couple of other projects we've been doing were some water projects. So doing water collection systems from the roofs and having it going through like a siphon. It would drop off into a different tube and the sediment would collect in that tube and the rest of the water would go up and go off into another chute where it would go through, I haven't had time with the name, some like UV radiation. I'm having a hard time thinking of the actual thing. But to then go through a filter into straight taps where people can get it. So we were doing these at schools. Then we also did some with some tribal communities, one with the Ateso tribe, which they're very rural area, and they were just be able to see how grateful people were just for water, seeing their original water sources. They were walking 3 to 5 miles just to get some really dirty, murky water. And they're still even happy with that. So being able to bring like fresh water right to their communities, it was very life-changing and very empowering to do, and brought me a lot of intrinsic value as well. So that's like kind of some of the work that I do. I'm kind of all over the place within the food systems and trying to bring it to a global sense, but then also be very focused and dial it down to the nitty-gritty. Just kind of doing it the original way of the first people of the land, the original land stewards. So thinking in a global sense, but then also very tied down to the original instructions. So it's kind of hard to describe my work because I do a lot of different things, but I hope I was able to give you a good grasp of what I do and my passions and aspirations.
Most definitely. And I know you're going to continue to tell us stories as we get going with our wild rice here.
Yeah. So today we're going to make a wild rice porridge. It's a very simple recipe. And to get started, we can get the wild rice cooking. So right here, I got some hand harvested wild rice from Leech Lake. It's kind of pinkish in color. And I got a whole bunch of varieties with me today, and I can show them off so you can see how wild rice can look different from different communities. So I'm just going to do a half cup of wild rice here. And this wild rice is already rinsed. Normally you want to rinse your wild rice. You do that with most rice, actually, you're cooking. So starting off with the half cup of wild rice, and with this wild rice, we're gonna do a 2-to-1 ratio. So 2 cups of water to 1 cup of rice.
And Derek, we had some questions about wild rice.
Yeah.
One was about, what's the difference in using rice that was just harvested as opposed to rice from maybe a year or two ago?
There should be no difference. As long as it's properly stored, the wild rice is gonna be the same. That's at least to my understanding.
What does properly stored mean?
So you want it to be in like a bagged up. It usually comes in like 50-pound Teflon bags that are inside that bag. There's like a plastic bag that's vacuum sealed. So with that, it like prevents from it to get into the animals. Like definitely if you like leave it open and have it just kind of sitting out, like the mice will definitely start to get to it, I believe. Maybe like some chipmunks or any other pests. So it's kind of just good to make sure, like, I even just like having it in a bag like this will be good for years, like many years. That's why our wild rice is so valued, because it was something that we could rely on through the winter. The winter was like our hardiest years. Like you weren't able to really go out and forage. A lot of our foods weren't easily preserved, but our wild rice we can count on to. If the harvest was good, we can count on having it all through winter long.
And Brenda is asking if the ratio of water is the same, depending on what wild rice you have.
If it's hand harvested wild rice, it's generally all the same, 2-to-1. But if you're using cultivated wild rice, it will probably require much more water, and the cooking time is going to be longer as well. So I'm just going to get this on the stove real quick, and then I can talk a bit more about the wild rice. So I'm going to put this on a really high heat, bring it up to a boil, and reduce it down to a simmer. And if you didn't see, I salted the water as well. It's important to salt the water. Yeah, so cultivated wild rice, it takes longer to cook. It's not like real true wild rice. It's grown under human conditions, and it's like bleached and lied, so it has that natural dark color. A lot of times you see in the grocery store, everything, they want to make everything look the same, and that's this case. So it's just all gonna be like black kernels. So here's some. Okay, here. So this is some cultivated wild rice from Red Lake. And you can see it's just all black. And on the back, I'm looking at the cooking instructions, and this says 1 cup of wild rice to 3 cups of water. So this is actually requires an extra cup of water compared to the hand harvested wild rice. And then it says for the cooking instructions, cook to 45 to 60 minutes, low boil and loose lid. So that's actually a really long time, because the hand harvested wild rice I can cook in like 15 minutes. I just bring it up to a boil, and once it's at a boil, I reduce it down to a simmer. And once when all the water evaporates, that's how I know I have it to the cook I like. So this is Red Lake Nation cultivated wild rice.
Derek, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Is that the same as what the University of Minnesota created, that back in the 70s? Is that cultivated rice, or is that patty rice? Is that a different kind?
This is the same.
Okay.
Same. Yeah, so the University of Minnesota, they kind of like genetically modified this rice to make it be able to grow domestically. And I'm not a big fan of this, because not only it takes longer to cook, it's like less flavorful. The hand harvested wild rice is more of like a smoky taste, and it also kind of feeds better nourishly. It has a lot more higher nutritional value. compared to the cultivated wild rice. And I also feel like it feeds my spirit better. When I'm eating this stuff, it makes me feel like a lot stronger, more energetic compared to the cultivated wild rice. Yeah, it definitely does kind of have like a more wild flavor to it. I agree. So I'm gonna put some of this in my hand and see if I can get a good. See it well. So this is Leech Lake. As you can see, it's kind of more like lighter in color, kind of like pinkish, a little bit light brown. And I got some other wild rice. This is some wild rice from Mille Lacs. As you can see, is a lot more darker in color, and some bigger grains as well. The grain size is bigger. Here I got some wild rice from Net Lake, which is similar color to the Mille Lacs one. This is how most hand harvested wild rice looks. And these kernels are really big. And with Net Lake wild rice, it puffs up really nicely. So you can actually puff up wild rice like popcorn. You can put it on get your pan to really scorching heat and put your kernels on there, and I'll start to dance and puff up. Otherwise, you can cook it in some oil. You can deep fry it or shallow fry it. And puff up that same way. So you can puff up the wild rice in like 3 different ways. And then here's some wild rice from Spirit Lake. And some people may call this like cracked rice or broken rice because a lot of the wild rice is in like small little pieces. So generally people use this wild rice for like soups. This is like kind of better for soups, kind of like some soup wild rice.
Derek, can I just share mine from White Earth?
Yeah, please.
Says, I don't know if you can you see that?
Yeah.
So it's a lighter color, but that's from a couple years ago, and it's kept really well.
Yeah, it looks really nice. So I just got my eye on my wild rice right now. It came up to a boil. Kind of started to boil over a little bit, so I reduced the heat. Now it's down to a simmer. Turn it down a little bit more. So this should be cooked through and very shortly. So I was just talking about that puff wild rice. This is what it kind of looks like. I just puffed some up. So kind of like double up in size. And you can eat this as a snack. Makes like a nice garnish for like a salad or dessert. Good like for like a granola, trail mix, something like that. Yep.
How do you make that?
Yeah, I can show it if we got some more time once the porridge is done. I'd like to demonstrate that, but there's 3 different ways you can do it. You can bring a pan to like a really high heat, like a kind of like a scorching heat, and once you see the pan start to smoke up, you can add your wild rice to the pan. You want to do this in really small batches. You don't want to overcrowd the pan because then it won't all puff up and it burns really easily. So you want to make sure that you have like a even heat distributed throughout the whole pan, and that all the wild rice can get even access to that heat. So once you put in that really hot pan, like the kernels will start to shake and dance a little bit. And you want to keep that pan moving, keep the wild rice agitated. So I'll take it on and off the heat and like shake the pan and until it kind of all puffs up. You want to be very careful with it because once when the wild rice starts to smoke, that's how you know you burnt it, and that whole little batch is going to be ruined. So it's definitely takes a little bit of finesse, and there's like a little bit of a learning curve when it comes to this. I think that's kind of one of the more challenging things, like of a native food technique that I kind of had to learn, but it's really not that challenging. Otherwise, you can shallow fry it. and that kind of like leaves some like oily residue. So I don't really prefer that method. This is how I did this one because there was like a little bit of oil left over in my pan from this morning's breakfast. So this kind of has some oil on it, but it was sunflower oil, so it's a very neutral oil, and we weren't able to can't really taste it, and it's native as well, so it goes well hand in hand. Otherwise, you can deep fry it. You can just put it in the deep fryer, and that'll work as well.
Owamni has a dessert that has some of the puffed rice, and it totally makes the dessert.
So, can you say that again?
Oh, Owamni has a dessert with the puffed rice on it, and it's my favorite thing about the dessert.
What is the dessert exactly?
I can't remember what. It's some kind of fruit. I can't remember. I had it on my birthday, but what I do remember is the puffed wild rice.
It sounds delicious. Yeah, wild rice is very good. Can't go wrong with that. I just recently tried a persimmons for the first time. It's like a native fruit. I guess it kind of like grew in the Missouri area, even like a little bit further south, but it's kind of looks like a tomato, but it's I don't even know how to describe it, but I just had one for the first time like a week and a half ago, and it was like life changing. I want to start experimenting with them a little bit more, but it seems they're kind of expensive, like most of our native foods. A lot of our native foods are very expensive because all the time it takes to harvest it, process it, and end up like to get into that final product. So that's why you don't see a lot of our native foods in stores, or then when you do see them in stores, they're really marked up and very expensive. So like for the wild rice, for example, right now it's getting up to $20 a pound. And it's due to multiple factors. Right now our ricing beds are endangered and threatened. So it's been hard for people to go out and harvest the rice because climate change has definitely affected that, and pollution. It's affected like the quantity of rice on our rice beds and the ability to be able to go out. So like for example, the north had like a lot of flooding, and the south was like a big drought, so that they weren't able to get their canoes out on the water, or the rice wasn't properly germinated and was able to make seed for that year. So that's like a big factor, but then another factor is just going out and harvesting the wild rice. It's a very rigorous process. It's kind of dangerous. You got to have like a little crew out there and take your canoes out during the rising moon, which we call a Manoomin is just like the moon that you go out and rice. It usually falls between like August and September. So you go out there and you're knocking all the rice into your canoe, and these wild rice, they have these ricing beards, winnowing beards they're called. They can like stick into your skin, and it's pretty painful. You gotta like tie up your ends of your clothes, like the cuffs of your pants and legs. And people even wear sunglasses because those winnowing beards can get like stuck in your eyeball, and you have to go to the hospital and get like surgically removed. So then once that process is done, then you got to take it all the way to shore and bag it up. And then you got to actually like wood fire parch it. So get a fire going and get some ashes in a hole and put a big pot over there and put your wild rice in there. And the first process is parching it. So you're stirring it around in this hot pot, loosening up the husks. And then you take it over to the windmill station, which is where you dance on the rice. You put on some moccasins. You danced on the rice to continue removing those husks. That winnowing, that's also called like jigging station. And then with the final station is the winnowing station, where you put the wild rice in there and you have it in a birch bark basket and put the shaft blow into the air. And then you might take it to like a little table and start kind of like finally going through the grains and making sure that's completely clean for final packaging. So it takes a lot of work and a lot of energy to be able to get this wild rice right here. So that's why it's so expensive, and especially doing this by yourself, it's going to be very rigorous. So that's some of the reasons why our wild foods are our native foods, foods that are indigenous to this American continent, just are so expensive. It can just be one person. One person can actually do it by themselves. Otherwise, it's usually like a crew of 2 to 3 that go out on the water and harvest it. And you don't even have to process it yourself. I know some people are actually just taking it to processing facility plants, and they can actually just expedite the process and just do all the steps at a factory. So like the parching and the jigging and the winnowing, that can all be done at a factory. You just have to pay for it, obviously, but saves you a lot of time, and especially if you're doing like very big wild rice harvests for your community or for your family, that might be a route you might want to take. All right, so I got my wild rice cooked through, and I'm just gonna add it to put a little camera on it if I can. So it's done when it's starting to curl up like that. And I'm just gonna add it to this blender right here. Just got like a little Ninja blender.
And Derek, we had another question too about if wild rice is an annual plant getting reseeded every year or a perennial.
That's a perennial. It's like a wild plant that just comes back every year. At least that's my understanding. All right, I usually just do this by eyeball. So I got like the wild rice in the blender, and I usually do like the milk, the nut milk to eyeball. I just usually have it cover the wild rice, maybe just slightly over the wild rice, but I'll just measure it to make it save any confusion. All right, so I'd say about 3/4 cup of milk. I'm using almond milk today. So as I said, like it's gonna just kind of completely cover the wild rice. It's just about even with it, maybe slightly above. And if you have some fresh berries, I'd recommend putting it in the blender as well. It'll give the porridge some nice color, and it'll kind of diffuse the taste a little bit. So I mean, you could use it for a garnish on top. I'm just gonna throw it right in. So I have some blueberries and some cranberries here. I'm just gonna put it in as such. And you can do as much as you want. Obviously, the more berries you put in, the more of that flavor it's gonna have, more of the vitamins and good stuff, the antioxidants you're gonna get from those berries. So I'm just gonna blend this up. And then we can also add in our seasonings. So we're gonna just blend this up all together. So I got some maple syrup here. And one thing that I've been wanting to do is start like a maple syrup coalition. Just like all of our native foods, it's so rigorous to go out and harvest it, to process this. So during our tapping moon, during our maple season, which usually falls around March, has to do with the weather because you want the sap to be able to run up and down those trees. Harvesting maple syrup takes about 40 to 60 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. So you think about that, it's if you want multiple gallons of syrup, you're gonna need over hundreds of gallons of sap. And it's not always easy for an individual to do that, or even a restaurant or an organization, because it requires a lot of resources, a lot of time, space, and equipment. So one thing that I'd like to do is start a sap coalition. So maybe an organization can focus on a certain tree, like the sugar maple, and then another organization focuses on a different tree, like the box elder, and they just focus on harvesting as much as they can get, harvesting the sap, making syrup, making sugar, so that they have a specific taste profile of that tree. Because as a chef, as a foodie, it's kind of cool to try those different flavors of going tree to tree and seeing how it can affect the taste of a dish. So being able to have this coalition where someone's focusing on box elder, someone's focusing on birch, someone's focusing on sugar maple, someone's focusing on butternut, and then at the end of the year they can all be in this coalition trade. So they can say, oh, I got a whole bunch of box elder syrup, I'll trade you for that sugar maple syrup or the maple sugar itself. And it would just bring more access and more awareness to these foods. Oh yeah, so I forgot to add the seasonings. So I'm gonna add some maple syrup, maybe about like 2 tablespoons worth. You can always add more. And then you can add some like vanilla extract or maple extract if you're into that. It's not necessary. And maybe like half a teaspoon. And then
What did you put in before the vanilla? I don't have my rice ready yet, so.
some maple syrup. And I put in
Okay.
about like a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons worth.
And is this something I could do like in my Ninja?
Yep, that's what I'm doing in mine. I'm doing it in my little
Okay.
Ninja blender.
Awesome.
So I did about like maybe a tablespoon and a half of maple syrup, a half a teaspoon of vanilla, and then you could add your seasonings. I think in the recipe I called for allspice. I don't have any on me right now, so I'm just using some cinnamon. Michelle mentioned that she had some like pumpkin spice. I've never tried that before, but I think that would be very good. It'd be fun to try that. So I'm just maybe doing half a teaspoon of that, not even, probably less than half a teaspoon. So we got our wild rice in here, we got our nut milk, we got some fresh berries, we got some maple syrup, some vanilla extract, and some cinnamon. And now we're just gonna blend this up. You might want to turn down your volume or cover your ears. So I'm about to start this blender, so I don't want to shock anybody. Or actually, I can just mute myself. I'll just mute myself. Wow. So these berries really made a difference. As you can see, I got this beautiful purple porridge now. Normally, like the porridge you guys are going to be making is kind of emulate the wild rice that you have. So it might be grayish in color or pinkish in color. So now that we got this porridge all ready, we can start plating it up. So obviously you can affect the texture of the porridge. If you want it to be more thicker, just add less milk, and vice versa. And let's see if I can get a good camera angle for y'all. So there we go. It's very nice, very beautiful purple color. That's definitely the blueberries going to work right there. So then we have some garnishes that we're going to finish it off with. We got some like a seed mix. So we got some sunflower seeds and some pumpkin seeds. You might see the pumpkin seeds in the store referred to as pepitas. This is what they're called in the store. So we're going to sprinkle this on there as such. Then we also got some walnuts here. You can use any type of nuts. Some hazelnuts would be appropriate as well, as they're native, or hickory nuts. So just sprinkle this in there as well. And then we got some dried cranberries. Just put that in the middle. And then I have that puff wild rice that I was mentioning earlier. Just sprinkle that around as well.
I want to come to your house and have some of that.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple recipe that you can do. I think we did that in 20-30 minutes. So it's very healthy, very nutritious, and right now it's something that would make sense to eat right now since the wild rice is something that we could have in the winter. So any questions for me?
If not, do you think we would have time to show how to do one of the methods of the rice?
Yeah, totally. I'll buff some up. Mix up my station over here. Let's see if I can get this camera angle all figured out. I was bringing this up to a really hot heat right now.
So Derek, are there any classes or anything you want to promote that are coming up?
This is kind of like my last public class for the year, I think. Next week, I'm speaking with students over at Packer Collegiate Institute over in Brooklyn, New York. And then me and Hope Flanagan, we're going up to Grand Marais. They're doing this wild food processing class. So we're going to go up to Grand Marais and learn how to process some different indigenous foods, learn some different skills around that. And then we're going to go up to Grand Porridge and look at a couple sacred sites. Hope's going to take me to. And then right after that, I'm going to kind of take some time off. I'm taking time off for a few weeks and go see my family for the holidays. So nice little reset so I don't get burned out with this kind of work. And then getting back in the swing of things in the new year. I look forward to doing all that. So.
Well, and while this might be our last class together of 2022, Derek and I are talking about what we might be able to do later in the spring or early summer. So definitely stay tuned for that. And if you're not on our Facebook page or Instagram, please join us at Minneapolis Edible Boulevards. And I also wanted to share, if you have not checked out the Native Roots Trading Post downtown Minneapolis, please visit them too. Last year I got these beautiful earrings. My friend Nancy in Leech Lake, her cousin, made these. So they have all sorts of stuff. They have Manoomin or wild rice from White Earth, and jewelry, soap, you name it. So anyway, just wanted to also promote that. So in the former Dayton's building.
As you can see, my pan is starting to smoke. So I'm gonna turn down the heat just a smidge. I still want to be at this heat, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of wild rice to the pan. This is not a good pan for this. It's almost like a cast iron pan now, just because I don't like wash it and stuff. Normally you want like a non-stick pan, but we'll make it work. So normally I could just shake it and it'll like move. I'm gonna have to use like a wooden spoon in this case. And you can see that the kernels are starting to dance around a bit on the pan. And we're just gonna take this on and off the heat.
because it can burn really easily. You'll kind of start to hear it pop as well, kind of like Rice Krispies when it touches the milk. So once you hear like no popping for like 3 seconds, that's also maybe like a good telltale sign that it's done. You don't want to, you just want to take it off the heat, kind of like popcorn. Last thing you want is a whole bunch of burnt kernels. And hot color is done right here. So as you can see, it kind of like doubled up in size, changed colors a bit. It's how you puff up wild rice.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, happy to share. I just tried some of the porridge and it's really good. Some good stuff.
And we love to have everybody share their photos of their final porridge on Facebook. So when you get to that, please do. I will post a recipe on Facebook as well. So anyway, so happy to have you all here. And we will have another class on January 21st with Kelly Shea. I'm not sure what she will be making yet, but we will be sure to post that hopefully in the next week or two. So any final thoughts, any questions for Derek before we close out? All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. Derek, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. It's just so happy to have you here again. So look forward to partnering with you more in the future.
Thank you. Hope you guys all have a great day.
Take care, everybody.